used for verification. That can be used for verification as the need applies. So the importance of a labor contract is to, one, define the scope of work. What is it that the person will be doing? What is it that is expected? What are the targets? What are the timelines, deadlines for delivery of certain outcomes or certain activities? The second most important reason to have a contract is for the duration. Because, for instance, if I wanted to disengage that landscaper with an oral contract, he would not know when his period of engagement would have ended. Unless I say it to him, he'll probably say, oh, he didn't remember, or two, he didn't hear, right? With a written contract, you don't run that risk of persons having uncertain expectations. And the duration of an engagement is very important, because if it is that you are seeking to disengage under the Jamaican labor laws, there is something called notice that is to be given, or payment in lieu of that notice. So you have to have something that is an independent verifier of the terms and conditions in terms of duration. Now, a contract is about offering a service or providing goods for return of a monetary payment in most instances. And the contract normally bears the information in terms of what is the monetary payment, the quantum, and if there are any other benefits that accrue to the contracted organization or individual. Now, the contract should also expressly, just expressly, and I like the things to be written. So the contract should expressly state the mechanisms for dispute resolution. How do you address a dispute, a conflict, if it arises between the parties? And the communication expectations. For instance, in an employment contract, you have some persons that say, oh, sure, me not talk to my supervisor, because I no use. Never talk to the head of the organization. No. If your contract says that you report to a particular supervisor, you are obligated to raise your concerns first with that immediate supervisor, not to go to the head of the organization. And also, the head of the organization, being aware of the contract specification, should not entertain that kind of communication.
Amen.
Who said amen in my church? Yes, it's a serious business, because what we find is that, oh, I talk to them people because then they don't get nothing done. I'm going to the chairman, because me and him go to the same, may I use church now. We go to the same church. So I'm going to go straight to the chairman. No, that is not correct. And if we have a system in an organization and we don't respect our own system, we can't expect an employee or an independent contractor to respect that system. So whatever is written in the contract is serious business, right? And we have to ensure that we are observing what is in our contracts. All right, so having a written contract, or even an oral contract, but I'm more speaking about written contract, is really for the reason of clarifying the reporting structure, as I mentioned, right? What is your target? What are the outcomes? What's the objective of that particular contract vis-a-vis the overall objective, strategic direction of the organization? So each contract should fall in place in the organization so that that particular contract has certain deliverables that are linked to the overall objective of the organization. So we shouldn't have people working in an organization that then just do their own thing. We have too many situations where workers are in an organization, but they're keeping their own organization within that organization, because what they're doing has absolutely no bearing on the strategic direction of the organization to which they have been engaged. So a contract should provide all of that kind of clarification. And while I go through the slides, you're welcome to take photographs for your own immediate reflection, but we promise to give you a copy of the presentation. All right, so any feedback in terms of those points in relation to the importance of labor contracts?
Gillian, just for clarification, you said the contract would state who the person reports to.
Exactly.
All right. What I find is sometimes there's a gray area between HR and the person they report to. At times I say to them, go back to your manager of the area because that deals with operational issues. But they tend to feel that HR, they should come to HR first. For instance, I'm not coming to work. Who do you call? Who do you report to?
That is something that you will have to sort out as HR, because clearly the communication in the onboarding process is not clear to them. So in your future onboarding processes, you have to indicate to the contracted persons that your immediate supervisor, if you're employed, is your first point of contact. And this is where all communication should emanate from in relation to official communication with the company, right? For those existing workers, clearly, you have to have a quote-unquote reorientation so that they understand the expectations where communication is concerned. All right, is that okay with you, Jada?
Yes, it's Jackie.
Oh, who was that speaking a while ago?
This is Jackie.
Oh, Jackie.
Gillian, I was really referring not to staff contract with staff members, independent contractors.
All right, so even independent contractors.
Right, I understand what you're saying. Differentiate early what they go to.
That states who is their point of contact, and that is the official means of communicating with you. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other persons want to weigh in on that? Jada? At some point, I thought I saw you trying to come in.
No, I wasn't commenting. I was joining. Thank you.
Oh, you're joining. All right. Welcome, my dear. All right.
So,
So,
I have a question, Ms. Carruthers.
Please repeat that.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
You listed some important elements of a contract. If there is an existing contract that is lacking maybe one or more of these elements, how would you suggest that that situation be treated? Because the contractual period is not yet finished. Do you draft a new contract to include these parts that are of utmost importance, or do you allow the existing contract to continue until it is over?
All right. How much time is left in the contract?
Another year.
All right. Is it that it is generally missing from all the contracts that you have in the organization?
Yes.
And what is missing?
Communication expectations and the mechanism for dispute resolution. There is a section for disciplinary and grievance procedure, but not dispute resolution, which I would think is a little bit different.
All right, so in relation to dispute resolution, what I would suggest is that you could issue a general circular to all staff in relation to the procedures for dispute resolution. And then in relation to any other specific matter related to communication, you could actually do a side letter to each of the contracted workers in relation, just probably a updated contract details. So it's not that they're going to be re-signing or getting an extension or anything, but you could do it as a side letter.
Okay.
If it is that you believe it's going to be necessary, having done that general memorandum to all staff about dispute resolution. Because once it says that everybody reports directly to their immediate supervisor first, and it goes through the process, then that should address that particular gap in the contract. But be sure to review the contracts immediately so that any subsequent contract that is issued would already have the amendment. Is that okay?
Okay.
Ms. Corodas. Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
If I just give a recommendation for what we do here in terms of if there's a clause that is missing from a contract, if something that is, or if there's an adjustment to a contract, what we have in place is called an addendum. So it's
like a side letter.
Right. So it simply means that the same parties that would sign the previous contract would sign this addendum, including it into the contract to say, all right, then this is what has changed. It is effective on this date, but everything else remains in place.
All right, so you could do that. You have some very disorderly people who don't want to sign nothing else. An addendum is especially important if it is that you're changing certain key things in terms of wages, benefits, and so. But in the example I was given of just clarifying the communication channel, they may not necessarily need to sign because you don't want people to say, oh, I didn't sign to that. Because you're not asking for their quote unquote agreement to that, but it's more of an instruction. And that is why you can issue it as an addendum, but I would more say it's a side letter, which is just communicating the expectation of the organization.
Oh, okay. I thought it was some changes in terms of adjustment to the contract, and that's why I said it.
Yeah, so that's why I listened carefully to what she was asking. So if it's an adjustment in terms of a benefit or rate of pay or duration, definitely that has to be an addendum, which is signed by both parties. But in the case that you gave, you can issue that as a side letter.
Question you were asking?
Is another question? All right, so on the screen, we have two types of contracts. And pay careful attention to this because I recognize that a number of you, when you spoke earlier, you were making a mistake with the terms. All right, so contract of service, contract off is giving your service. And this is synonymous with an employer-employee relationship. And this is the only kind of contract that is covered by the Jamaican labor laws. So this contract is the same one that designates a person to be a worker. Quite recently, we would have heard in the media the situation of industrial security guards in Jamaica. And it has been deemed by the court that they offer a contract of service and therefore are covered under the labor laws and have an employer-employee relationship. I'll go into another more detailed discussion of the difference in a little bit. But contract of service is what is that primary arrangement where we say that a person is a worker. And it should not be confused with a contract for service. A contract for service is that relationship where there is a service contract. For instance, you want to outsource your services, you can for Xerox or whatever it is. If it is that you want to outsource your accounting services, then you would engage an individual as an accountant, or you can engage a firm, whether it be Pricewaterhouse or any other of those kind of accounting firms or audit firms. If you want to outsource your HR or industrial relations, and I'm sure Ms. Hall Onika is wondering how I'm not mentioning HR concepts. You could outsource your industrial relations or HR functions to a company like HR Concepts or any other. And if you want to outsource your legal services, you could outsource to an individual or again, a firm. Similarly, where janitorial services are, transportation services being outsourced, we see other small contracts, delivery being outsourced also. So it is not something that is unusual. But in this kind of service contract, or we call it independent contract, the individual is not an employee of your company. And similarly, if you outsource to an organization that have people placed in your organization working, then those workers are not employed to you, but employed to the company you've contracted. And therefore you have absolutely no jurisdiction over their employment relations. I noticed that I have on the call, I think about 2